Hello and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing all right. It's kind of a rainy day, kind of a staying home in your PJs kind of day.
It's been a very rainy summer.
Yeah.
But our spring was dry and hot.
Yeah.
So
can't complain too much, I suppose. But you know, I'm really happy to be doing the show with you today.
Oh, good. Me too. I don't know how I feel about tonight's movie.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. What are we watching today?
Today, Sarah, we are watching KAIDAN OIWA NO BOREI, which translates as The Tale of Oiwa's Ghost, which, if you're a long-time listener of the show, should signal you right away that this is yet another adaptation of YOTSUYA KAIDAN. This particular adaptation is from 1961, and it is directed by Tai Kato.
Kato. Not like Kato, like Green Hornet's friend?
Sidekick? No.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. Yeah, as Ben said, this is going to be our fifth entry of a YOTSUYA KAIDAN adaptation onto our list. Do you want me to go through which ones we've had before?
Yeah, might as well. Maybe people are new to the show.
Maybe. So our very first entry was in 1949. We covered that in episode 153, and it did not rank.
That's right.
Yes.
It was
a psychological thriller, for lack of a better genre designation. Our next one was covered in episode 191. Came from 1956, and it ranks at number 194. In 1959, we had a version called YOTSUYA KAIDAN, directed by a gentleman named Masumi. That was covered in episode 265. It ranked at number 128. Later that same year, in 1959, we got a version from director Nakagawa, but this was called Takedo YOTSUYA KAIDAN. We covered it in episode 267, and it ranks number 12.
Yes.
So here's the thing why I'm like a little apprehensive about tonight's movie. Every time we watch it, it gets better, both in terms of a viewing experience and in terms of ranking. And I can't imagine a version that's going to go above number 12. So I'm like, hopefully this movie still has something that is of interest and doesn't just feel like, yeah, we've seen this 4 times already. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
These sorts of adaptations, like I talked a little bit about this in the last episode, how before home video and TV enabled you to watch a movie over and over again, movies kind of were more repetitive in a certain way. And you countered with like, well, we live in this Marvel movie, superhero remake, reboot era. And I totally get what you mean by that. But also, there is a bigger difference between different Iron Man movies or superhero movies than like some of these vampire movies that we get, where it's like literally like, why is he dressed like that? Well, because Dracula dresses like that.
Yeah, what I was meaning was like, I don't know about the Marvel movies now because we've kind of dropped off watching them, but particularly I guess it would be first and second phase. The first movie was always like origin story. He has to fight someone who has his powers, but he's bad.
That's true.
That's what I was meaning.
No,
but
totally.
I also still take your point.
But when it comes to these Japanese ghost stories that, especially YOTSUYA KAIDAN, it's less a feeling of like, oh, whatever, we can just keep remaking the same movie, and almost a feeling of like ritual or tradition where it's like, oh, no, you have to have this scene every time. This is the scene that tells you it's this story or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So some context for that, in particular for YOTSUYA KAIDAN, is it originated as a kabuki play in 1825. So, oh, hey, this year would be 200 years.
200 years of YOTSUYA KAIDAN?
Damn.
Wow.
I don't know. I'm not good at doing math on the fly to figure out what it would be like in 1961. But in any case, that's a lot of repeats. It's a very, very popular play. It was done in 5 acts and as a double feature over 2 days with 47 ronin, Kandahon Chushingura, which is also a significant and highly popular play.
That also gets remade into a movie like every 5 years.
So I understand why we keep coming back to this material. And as Ben said as well, when you have that kind of legacy baggage, you have certain things you need to include. The look of Oiwa in particular. Typically, there's an incident involving some corpse nailed to a door, certain things like that. And that's because of like the significance that they play in the original play. The other reason why I'm kind of apprehensive about tonight's movie is Tai Kato YOTSUYA KAIDAN streamlined the story in such a way that like it gave you what you want, but did away with some of those iconic moments. It made it a better film, at least in an adaptation sort of way. But from what I hear, this movie, Kaidan Oiwa no Borei, kind of goes back to those roots of making sure we include everything, which I understand. You know, our most recent one streamlined, so we want to go back to what we want to see. But the one that so far has been most consistent to the play was the one from 1949.
Sure, although the one from 1949...
Its twist was, okay, I can go into more detail in this, but for folks who might not be familiar with YOTSUYA KAIDAN as a story, there's a ghost who was a woman named Oiwa, and she haunts her husband for revenge. And in the 1949 version, it takes more of a psychological approach that Oiwa isn't actually a ghost. It's all in Iemon's head as a manifestation of his guilt.
Yes. See, here's the thing. I really liked the 1949 version. I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was the longest. It was in 2 parts. It didn't rank because it wasn't horror, really. But the thing about all these different adaptations and watching all of them is that even on, you know, in America, we get all these different adaptations of Dracula or Frankenstein or Phantom of the Opera or whatever over and over again. But, you know, take Frankenstein for an example. It's more different every time than these YOTSUYA KAIDAN adaptations. Like these YOTSUYA KAIDAN adaptations, the differences that we see between them are certainly differences of filmmaking style, right? I think if you want to determine the difference between different Japanese directors, look at how they approach YOTSUYA KAIDAN, I guess. So you have different filmmaking styles, and then it's like differences of emphasis, like the 2 1959 versions, right? We really liked Tokaido YOTSUYA KAIDAN from Nobuo Nakagawa, and we ranked the other 1959 version by Kenji Misumi much lower. And one of the big differences between them was the Kenji Misumi version, they had hired like a matinee idol to play Iemon, the evil husband who kills his wife. And so because of that, they made Iemon more sympathetic in that version, because it would be kind of like having, I don't know,
George Clooney,
right, play like a Bluebeard type in a movie now. So they made him like more likable, whereas the Nakagawa version was going for straight horror, so they were able to have Iemon just be bad, right? And so it's these differences in emphasis. It's like seeing a bunch of different versions of Hamlet. And the other thing that tends to be different version to version is, you know, there are these core characters in the story. There's Iemon, who's the Ronin who, you know, needs money and desires a better life and is greedy, and this leads him down this dark path. There's Naosuke, who's his like buddy who leads him astray. There's Oiwa, who's the wife, and there's Takuetsu, who's the masseuse. And then there's like a lot of other ancillary characters. There's
you're missing Osode.
Yeah, there's Osode.
She's pretty integral, Ben.
Sure. There's also Ume. There's also all of these people's parents and husbands and wives and cousins and whatever. And there's all these people who get duped into betraying all these other people. And I would say, other than like emphasis and filmmaking style, the other big difference between versions tends to be how many of these ancillary characters do we keep and how important are they?
Yeah. So I'll tell the folks at home what happens in the original play. I have streamlined it quite a bit because it's a 5-act play that takes place over 2 days. There's a lot of stuff in here.
When Sarah says takes place, she means like it's 2 days to watch the play.
Yeah. They would do acts like 1, 2, 3, or maybe it was 1 and 2, and then it would be 47 Ronin, acts 1, 2, 3, or something like that. And then the next day it would be 47 Ronin, acts 4, 5, and then Yotsuya Kaiden 4, 5, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, because like, if you want the full details about like kabuki and these plays and all of that, definitely listen to episode 153 when we go into a lot of detail about it. But what I really like about the idea of bringing 47 Ronin and Yotsuya Kaiden together is 47 Ronin is like, oh, samurai, honor, kill yourself for honor. Like, oh, aren't these guys so good? And they don't have a master, but like, oh, how tragic and drama, and like putting the image of the Ronin in particular, but samurai on a pedestal. And then Yotsuya Kaiden's like, yeah, but they can be shitty too.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I mentioned, the original play was written in 1825 by this man named Tsuraya Nanboku IV. And he has some historical, I'll say like news headlines that he incorporates into the story, which I feel like it's not enough to really say a historical basis, but it kind of helped tie in the play into the social themes of the time. So one of the headlines from the newspapers was of these 2 servants who they had different masters, but they conspired together to kill those 2 masters. And then the other headline is a samurai caught his lover with a servant, cheating on him with a servant. So he killed them and nailed them to a wooden board that was then thrown into a river. And so their bodies were discovered nailed to this board as it floated. So that's why like that image of the floating door, like that is considered significant for the play. And then the inciting incident of these 2 Ronin killing people who would be higher up. In Iemon's case, it's a father-in-law. In Naosuke's case, it's his master. He's killed his master. He ends up killing a different guy. But in any case, so yeah. Though that's kind of the inciting incident.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, speed running Yotsuya Kaiden.
Okay.
So the Ronin Iemon, he's married to Oiwa, who is very beautiful, but he's poor. And Oiwa's been unhappy, so her father goes to talk to Iemon, and Iemon gets angry and kills his father-in-law. Meanwhile, Naosuke has previously killed his master, and he's obsessed with this married sex worker named Osode, who happens to be Oiwa's sister. And Naosuke kills her husband, basically, and then Iemon and Naosuke are like, oh, we'll go find the murderers, and in return, Osode has to marry Naosuke. Meanwhile, a rich woman named Ume, she loves Iemon, so she conspires to ruin Oiwa's beauty, so Iemon will dump her and go with Ume. The way that Oiwa is attacked is through a topical cream on her face. It's poison, so when she puts it on her face begins to melt, her hair starts to fall out, and Iemon's like, oh, yikes. So he wants to get a divorce, but in order to have a legitimate reason for the divorce, he bribes a local guy to rape Oiwa.
Takuetsu.
Yeah, that's
masseuse.
Takuetsu.
Yeah.
But he can't go through with it because, like, oh, what a pitiful lady. And she gets a look at her face, and then she's like, how dare you try to, like, hurt me and look at my face. And so she tries to, like, defend herself, but ends up falling on her sword. It's an accidental death after seeing her own appearance. So Iemon is like, sweet, now I get to go marry Ume. but Oiwa's ghost is haunting him. And on the wedding night, she tricks him into killing Ume and her father. And that's where the intermission hits. So when we come back, Iemon has kind of destroyed Ume's household. He ends up killing her mother and her servant. And Iemon then gets blackmailed by Naosuke. Naosuke has been married to Osode, but she won't consummate the marriage, which makes him angry. From a separate person who's like, all of this is fishy. Osode, you must be guilty of adultery because you got with this guy so soon after your previous husband's death. And so she kills herself in atonement and shame for that. And then Naosuke learns that she didn't want to have sex with him because actually they're siblings. Half siblings. So Naosuke's like, oh, what a shame to my name and my family. So he commits suicide. Iemon continues to be haunted by Oiwa. He ends up going into the mountains as a hermit and he goes mad. And then Takuetsu, that masseuse from before, he tracks down Iemon and kills him.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on, even in that streamlined explanation.
Yeah.
And so these movie versions tend to like pick and choose what's important. And I think what we liked about Tokaido Yotsuya Kaidan was it really stuck to like the Oiwa ghost story part. Like the idea of like Iemon being shitty and like being involved in this scheme to scar and disgrace his wife so he would have this excuse to get out of this marriage, and then the ghost like haunting him and making him kill all these people. And that's like the core of the story, not all this like other associated stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you do have a lot of characters.
A lot. I will say that Oiwa's ghost has had different depictions in these movies that we've seen, but kind of core to her depiction always is a left droopy eye, kind of a melted face to different extents, and her hair balding and falling out. Like literally there's a scene where she's combing her hair and it's literally falling out. So there have been different ways that she's been disfigured, whether that's poison face cream, or in one case it was a shamisen pick falling and scarring her. So like a lot of things.
Sometimes it's like a whole mix of things. Like sometimes it's like the shamisen pick falls on her face and then they get her like the topical cream to like help her, and then that makes it worse, and then she falls in a fire, and then she like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Sometimes there's like a lot of stuff going on here. And so yeah, like again, we appreciated Tokaido Yotsuya Kaidan because it kind of streamlined things into like what was important. And, you know, in talking about this play and these movie adaptations, if you go back and listen to our past episodes, like one of the things we tend to talk about is the way that these adaptations like pick up or drop details like a Rolling Stone, kind of, where it's like, oh, you know, this wasn't part of the original story, but it got brought in this adaptation, and now we're doing it again, and like what's important and what stays and what goes, right? Absolutely. I'm always kind of like, okay, how many character names can I remember off the top of my head without looking at any notes? In some versions, Osode and Oiwa get played by the same actress because they're sisters, and like Oiwa dies in the first half. So then, playing Osode gives her something to do in the second half, that actress. Yeah, which I really like. I like that element of it. The biggest link that this version has to past versions is with the actor playing Iemon. So this is the second version we've seen to star Tomisaburō Wakayama. He also played Iemon in the 1956 version directed by Mori. That's our lowest ranked version. Got to give him another chance, you know? He's coming up to the bat again. Yes. I've also heard that this version is noted for having one of the most like brutal and like totally villainous Iemons, like not a lot of redeeming qualities to this particular Iemon, which definitely contrasts the 59 Masumi version where Iemon was more sympathetic. This particular adaptation, which has a different title, so a little easy. Yeah, thank goodness for keeping things straight in my brain. Yeah, so this is Kaidan Oiwa no Borei, or The Tale of Oiwa's Ghost. Whereas the traditional title, Yotsuya Kaidan or Tokaido Yotsuya Kaidan, just means Ghost Story of Yotsuya, which is a place. or Ghost Story of Yotsuya in Tokaido.
Which is also a place.
Yes. This version is written and directed by Tai Kato. It is considered closer to the original play in tone and plot. So we'll see how much more of that complexity comes back. Kato is best known as a director of yakuza movies. But that would come after this. So he was born in 1916 in Kobe, Japan. And when his father's import business failed when he was 5 years old, he was sent to live with his grandparents in Nagoya. He became interested in film in middle school, watching like period films. And he was invited to Tokyo to join Toho by his uncle, director Sadao Yamanaka. During World War II, he worked for the Manchukuo Film Association, making documentaries. And after the war, he worked for Daiei and served as an assistant director on Rashomon in 1950. He was fired from Daiei as part of the Red Purge because he was chief secretary of the studio's union. And he kind of bounced around. He worked at Shin Toho for a while in the 50s, and then he joined Toei in 1956. And I think nowadays most Westerners know Toei for either its anime or its like Sentai, like tokusatsu stuff. Yeah. Toei makes the Super Sentai shows that get turned into Power Rangers in the US. At this time, Toei didn't really have an animation division yet, wasn't really doing any of that yet. But they were, I think, in the same vein, kind of a B-movie programmer kind of studio, not a prestige studio by any means. It was at Toei that Kato made a Hamlet adaptation called Throne of Flame in 1960, very like clearly trying to play off of Kurosawa's Throne of Blood Macbeth adaptation. And then he made this film there in 1961. So this is from Toei. When Toei pivoted to Yakuza films, and they also made a lot of ninja movies in the 1960s, Kato kind of followed, right? It's like, this is what the studio's making, so this is what I'm making. And he made a large number of these Yakuza films throughout the 60s and 70s. And he passed away in 1985 of liver failure. So
kind of like a shift towards like crime action movies.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see if we can see any of that inclination here. A lot of the cast and crew for this movie are people whose credits are like, yeah, they also did a bunch of Yakuza movies for Toei in the 60s kind of stuff.
So workers.
Yeah, we're not seeing like major stars. We have different actresses playing Oiwa and Osode. The most notable person in this cast is Iemon, who is, as I said, Tomisaburō Wakayama, who was born Masaru Okumura in 1929. And he was the son of a family of kabuki performers. So the whole family was a bunch of actors. They all had stage names, which was like very traditional in Japanese theater for a very, very long time. For example, Tomisaburō Wakayama's younger brother is Shintaro Katsu, who is best known for playing Zatoichi in the long-running Zatoichi series.
Which are dope as hell. Like, highly recommend.
Wakayama began studying judo at age 13 as kind of like an additional interest to acting, eventually achieving the rank of 4th Dan. And he was hired by Toho in the 50s to appear in Jidaigeki movies due to his martial arts skills. So it was like, oh, you can act and you can fight. Cool. And this sort of led to Wakayama being typecast as heavies, right? As like the big thugs that the hero has to fight. And so I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember his performance as Iemon in the 56 version all that well. But certainly by this time in the 1960s, Wakayama was mostly famous for being bad guys and villains. And so he really plays Iemon in that mold in this version of the film. And of course, he is most famous for after this in the 1970s going on to play Ogami Ito in the Lone Wolf and Cub films, which are, of course, hugely, hugely influential samurai movies from the 1970s.
So I've just looked up the 1956 version. It seems like the 1956 was just like people, like just like randos, you know, like no big names here.
The 59 Kenji Masumi version was supposed to be like an A-list prestige film, and then it got totally knocked out of the water by the Nakagawa film from Shintoho, which was supposed to be like a B movie, but like Nakagawa, of course, was like reaching the apex of his skills as a horror director, and it just made the more interesting movie, right? Mm-hmm. We've watched so many of these, right?
4 to be exact.
So Kaidan Oiwa no Borei was released in Japan on June 2nd, 1961. And it recently, as in like June 2025, got a Blu-ray release from Radiance Films, which also recently put out a box set of Daiei ghost story movies, which included the 1959 Masumi version of Yotsuya Kaidan. So this kind of bugs me a little bit because the 1949 Kinoshita version and the 1959 Nakagawa version have both been on Criterion Channel to stream for a long time, but have yet to see like disc releases from Criterion or anyone really in North America, even though the 59 version is the Nakagawa 59 version is widely considered the best one. So like it's cool that you can watch them on Criterion Channel, but it's weird that like the Masumi version and this version have gotten nice Blu-ray releases, but not the Kinoshita or Nakagawa versions yet. Mm-hmm. So like Criterion needs to get on it, is really what I'm saying.
I mean, hopefully someone from Criterion listens to the podcast. That would be cool. Well, folks, we are going to head out to watch the movie. Hopefully you can find a copy to watch along. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we'll discuss Kaidan Oiwa no Borei from 1961, directed by Tai Kato.
See you on the other side, everybody. Welcome back to Scream Scene, everybody. We just finished watching Kaidan Oiwa no Borei from 1961, directed by Tai Kato. Sarah, what did you think of this one?
I think I'm really tired of this story, both in the beats of this story, but also just like, yeah, let's watch domestic violence happen on screen. Like, I understand. I'm not trying to say like, oh, this is legitimizing domestic.
Yeah, like the bad guy's the one doing the.
Yeah, and he gets his comeuppance, but it's just like, man, I'm just so tired of watching this.
Okay, I think that's fair. I think we might have to like recalibrate from that bias a little bit to give the movie like a fair shake, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
I think I can be fair.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just calling me out for being biased. Does that mean that you're for domestic violence, Ben?
What? No.
We are obviously joking. What did you think?
I'm really conflicted on this version. I think my overall takeaway is I think this movie is really well directed and really poorly written, which is interesting because it was written and directed by the same person.
People can be good at one thing and not good at another thing.
For sure.
Like you in math.
Yeah.
You know, not good. You in writing, definitely good.
For sure. But that's sort of my takeaway.
Yeah, that's fair. Let me go through what happens in this movie. I sigh because, you know, I kind of gave a synopsis in the first half for the play, And I will say that Kaidan Oiwa no Borei does follow it pretty closely. So I'll really like kind of go through the beats, but highlight where it differs or takes an alternate route to get there.
That is one of the things about these YOTSUYA Kaidan movies, is that they are often just different enough from either the play or each other that you can't quite be like, well, it's just like those other ones. It's like, no, they're always
a little different.
Yeah.
So when we start, Oiwa has left Iemon because he killed a man, and he plans to confront his father-in-law about, where is Oiwa? Make her come back to me. And his father-in-law is basically taking Osode to it's a masseuse house, but it's basically a brothel. He is going to go sell Osode there for like indentured servitude. And Iemon sees this as an opportunity of like, I know where my father-in-law is going to be, so now I can corner him. His friend Naosuke joins him, sees Osode, and it's lust at first sight. The father-in-law is like, no, Iemon, like, I'm not going to tell you where Oiwa is. You're no son of mine, which makes Iemon quite mad and angry. That night, Naosuke goes to try to buy Osode, basically, for the night. Her fiance comes to see her. He works for the local lord. He's going to be leaving for a year. So he's like, oh, I'm here to see you, Osode, and I'm sorry that you're sold to be this brothel, but like just wait 1 year and I'll come back and rescue you. Naosuke's jealous about this fiance, so he plans to get him out of the way. Naosuke ends up luring out Iemon's father-in-law, so that way he and Iemon can kill the father-in-law, and he then goes to kill who he thinks is Osode's fiance, but it's actually the fiance's friend. Now, Iemon and Naosuke are like to Oiwa and Osode, like, don't worry, we'll find the killer together. Like, it'll all be okay. For the meantime, Osode, you should live with Naosuke as if your wife, for your own protection, and Oiwa will come back to live with Iemon. Then we cut to 1 year later. Oiwa has given birth to a son, but it was a difficult birth and she's never fully recovered. It's also implied that the kid, he's only a year old, but it also is implied that he's a little sickly as well. And so Iemon feels like he's saddled with poverty and an ill wife and child, and oh, my life is terrible. Now, something I forgot to mention is when Iemon is confronting the father-in-law, he also bumps into a local girl. Her name's Ume. She's part of the wealthy Ito family. She's smitten. It's love at first sight. Now, a year later, they've moved in next door, and the Ito family is like, Iemon, Ume loves you. She won't stop fucking talking about you. Please, can we make this work? And Yemen's like, I have a wife and child. And they're like, maybe we can come to some sort of arrangement. So the Ito family give some medicine to Oiwa that will basically cause her not to die, but to have a scarred face and start losing her hair, with the hope that this would cause Iemon to no longer love her, so therefore he will marry Ume.
Yeah, one of the things that comes up in this version, I feel like a little more than in past versions, is the idea that like Iemon is extremely shallow. Like he only likes Oiwa because she has a rockin' bod, basically.
Yeah.
And he complains about how she doesn't have a rockin' bod anymore now that she's given birth. And then, this is therefore the disfigurement poison, is the thing that'll cause him to really leave her, is the idea here.
Yeah. Now, Iemon, he's out with Naosuke at one point, and they see a couple of bodies nailed to a board floating down the river. And apparently it's like the new hip way of dealing with adulterers. They say like, oh yeah, everyone's doing it now, which
basically,
is like, that's not a good fad, my guys.
It's always really weird to me in an adaptation of something that made a particular concept famous, where they feel like they need to justify how the people in the thing got the idea. I know I'm not explaining that very well, but it would be like if in a Batman adaptation, he had to see someone else put their symbol on a spotlight first, you know, and then was like, oh, maybe I should do that. It's like, you came up with that. Let's, you know.
Actually, I'm pretty sure it's Commissioner Gordon who comes up with that,
Yeah,
not
that's true.
Batman.
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
Oh, called Ben out. So something that this movie does, as we kind of like implied at the very top of the second half, has a little bit of an alternative route for how we get to certain spots. You kind of see it with the floating board, but also some of the order of events is a little weird here. So Osode is worried about her sister, so she asks a local boy whose name is Kohei to go look in on her. So Kohei's at Oiwa's house, and that's when the Ito family medicine is brought in. Now, Kohei's mother is very sick and has been for a long time. So he actually tries to steal the medicine. Iemon catches him, and Iemon thinks it's actually just medicine, but he beats Kohei to an absurd degree, like pulling out his hair, tying him up and storing him under the floorboards. Like it's like, what the fuck is happening? Now, Takuetsu, the massage parlor owner, the brothel owner.
This is like the first adaptation, I think, where they've just come out and said that it's a brothel. I feel like in past versions, it's been a tea house or a massage parlor. And I don't know, Takuetsu is one of those characters who certainly changes from adaptation to adaptation in terms of like how innocent versus scummy he is.
Yeah. So he is here because he was giving a massage to Iemon. Like he actually does do massage. So he witnesses Kohei getting like the shit beat out of him. Then Iemon goes over to the Ito family to say thank you for the medicine. And that's when Oiwa takes the medicine and Takuetsu actually witnesses the illness and the melting of her face.
The very fast acting disfigurement.
And he's really freaked out about it, but he doesn't like say what's wrong. He's just like, I kind of need to get out of here. By the time he gets out of there, Iemon's coming back from the Ito household, and he's like, no, Takuetsu, like, has the medicine been taken? Because at this point, Iemon has learned that it's poison. So he's like, cool, you're going to rape Oiwa so that way I can get a divorce. And I think he pays Takuetsu to do it. So Takuetsu goes back in knowing that she's disfigured, and he's like really like, I guess I have to do this. He attacks Oiwa. She manages to kind of fight him off, and he's like, no, I'm sorry, your husband put me up to it because he's in love with Ume, your neighbor, yada yada. And he's like, if you don't believe me, look at the impact that the medicine has had on your face. So that's when Oiwa sees that she has been disfigured, and she's like, I'm going to go fucking kill them. Oh, but maybe I should brush my hair first. I can't just like go barging in. I should at least try to make myself presentable. So then we get the scene of her brushing her hair, it falling out, and she freaks out about the hair. Takuetsu tries to calm her down, but she ends up accidentally impaling herself on a knife that got put into the wall when Takuetsu was first trying to attack her. So it's a really roundabout way of getting through the scene of Oiwa's disfigurement and her death that is different from how we've seen it in the past.
It's all the same parts, just like in a weird order.
That is also like, you know, she's supposed to realize what's happened to her as she's brushing her hair.
Yeah.
So we get that moment. Then she sees she's disfigured, and she is supposed to have an accidental death when Takuetsu is attacking her. But yeah.
And like the way that she accidentally kills herself here, like a lot of times it's like she falls on a knife or something like that. This is like a tanto that's been like skewered through the wall, and she like falls against it, and it like cuts all the way through her neck, and then she like falls down or something. It doesn't really make physical sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Iemon comes in and he's like, is it done? And Takuetsu is like, she killed herself, basically. And Iemon goes to kill Takuetsu as like the other adulterer. And he convinces Iemon, no, not me, but Kohei's like under the floorboards. So Kohei gets killed and lashed to the board with Oiwa tossed into the river. Takuetsu helps Iemon take care of the body. Now I want to note Oiwa's death comes in at about an hour, just over an hour. And the whole movie is an hour and a half.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Because like I always think back to the 2-part version from 49, which is, the longest version, obviously, but like that version puts Oiwa's death at the end of part 1. So it's the midway point, right?
Yeah. We see Osode and Naosuke at their house, and Kohei's mother comes in and she's like, he didn't come home last night. I don't know where he is. And Osode sees Kohei and Oiwa, their spirits, through the window and is like, oh, no, they're just right there. And when they go out, the spirits aren't there anymore. And that kind of confirms that something spooky is going on. Iemon and Ume get married, but I think it's kind of implied that it's like at least a week. Like it's not like immediate necessarily because of off screen. It seems that Osode is told that her sister ran off after being accused of adultery.
But like in the editing of the movie, it feels like it happens right away.
Yeah, so it's a little strange. On Iemon's wedding night, Naosuke goes to him for some blackmail money because he's like, I know what you did with Oiwa because it was kind of my idea when we saw the adulterers on the board. So Naosuke gets paid off. Iemon's like, great, now I'm here with Ume. Hey, love bug. And then Oiwa's haunting begins. He gets scared and goes to attack Oiwa's ghost, but actually ends up decapitating Ume. That was cool. Then, as he's running through the household, Oiwa's ghost continues to haunt him and chase him, and he's like slashing at it and killing people in the household. He kills the father, he kills everyone, house servants, whatever.
And there's like a big like thunderstorm during this part.
Yeah, it's very good. Dutch angles, that sort of thing. So he gets to be now on the run, hiding out in the mountains at this monastery. Now, Naosuke has been living off of that blackmail money, and he finds some belongings in the river, this old kimono and the comb that we know was Oiwa and Osode's mother's. We do get a spooky moment of Oiwa and Kohei on a floating board, like coming up to Naosuke and Iemon on the riverbank very quickly. It's kind of a neat moment. But Naosuke takes the stuff back to the house, and Osode clues in that, no, my sister is dead. Like, this was her kimono. This was our mother's comb. Takuetsu comes by to give a massage, and he sees the kimono and he knows what's happened, and he spills the beans to Osode about what happened. Meanwhile, Osode's fiance has come back. He's trying to find her. He is looking for Takuetsu, the owner of the brothel. And just as Osode is running after Takuetsu to like beat him for being a part in Oiwa's murder, the fiance finds Osode and they get like a nice reunion. And Naosuke's like, oh shit, I killed the wrong guy.
Yeah. Fun fact. So the reason Yamasichi, that's Osode's fiance, is away for a year, and the movie doesn't tell you this, but this is something I found out reading about YOTSUYA KAIDAN sort of elsewhere. His lord that he talks about is the lord who gets killed in the story of the 47 Ronin.
Oh.
And he's off for a year being one of the 47 Ronin in that storyline and then comes back.
Oh, okay. So this is the first instance of there being an in-text connection between the two.
I think so, unless like they've done that in the plays. The plays always get adapted separately, and we're only ever looking at those adaptations, so we've certainly never seen it before.
That's neat. So then we cut to everyone's talking in Osode and Naosuke's house, and basically Naosuke's like, well, the jig is up, and I fucked up killing that wrong person, so I deserve to die, so you can kill me now. Just immediately turn on a dime. And the fiance is like, no, we'll storm Iemon's hideout all together, and we'll see if you live after that. If you do, then yes, we'll confront each other, but we need your help to go fuck up Iemon. So the three of them, Osode included, head to the monk monastery where Iemon is in hiding. We get this really neat moment where the monks are in a circle, basically doing a prayer circle around Iemon, who is clearly gone a bit mad, as they are trying to ward off Oiwa's spirit. We get a bit of a dream sequence where Iemon imagines him and Oiwa in this like kabuki style dance, and then suddenly she turns into the disfigured version of herself and the spirit version of herself and attacks him. And then he starts flailing his knife around and potentially killing some monks. And then that's when our three heroes have arrived to fight. And then we get a very fun fight sequence, which I think we can tie to the later Yakuza movies.
Yeah.
Of like storming the headquarters, monks getting killed left and right, which is like, why are they here? Like, why are they defending Iemon?
All the monks pull swords and are like, we must defend Iemon.
And it's like, why?
I guess because, he's demanded sanctuary at the monastery kind of deal.
Yeah, but he also just tried to kill them. Like, they didn't try to de-escalate.
No, for sure.
We get to a point where pretty much everyone is around them is dead. Oiwa's ghost is haunting Iemon, so he ends up killing some monks during the big fight. But it is Osode who delivers the final killing blow to Iemon. Naosuke has died in the fray, and he has like a dying line of like, so much for me.
Yeah, basically, I believe what he says is there was nothing good about this life, but it really reminds me of that scene in Repo Man with the guy dying who's like, I blame society.
So then Osode and her fiance get to leave as the snow falls around them. We do get to see a healed and back to normal version of both Oiwa and Kohei, because Kohei has also been like haunting Iemon. They kind of walk off into the sunset as well, and that's the end.
Mm-hmm. Before I talk about some of the things I liked about this movie as a movie and some of the things I didn't like about it and all of that, I kind of want to just point out what I see as some key differences between this and previous versions.
Oh, more than what I've kind of
given?
Okay.
Yeah, just like some things that I really noticed. I'm not going to get into, there is a whole thing with this whole movie where I feel like there's a lot of stuff that happens because it happens in the play, but it's out of order here, as if the guy making this movie kind of forgets why some of this stuff is in there. And I'll talk about that a little later because that's a whole thing. But one of the things about this version compared to others, this is definitely the scummiest Iemon we've ever had. There is no attempt here to make him in any way sympathetic. We've seen sympathetic Iemons in the past. We've also seen Iemons who kind of like have an arc, like a moral decay, where like Iemon's always like a Ronin. He's been like cast out from his clan and fallen on hard times. And that's usually like his inciting reason to start going down these dark paths. There isn't really an arc for him here, whether it's the arc of starting out honorable and becoming dishonorable, or, being this murderer who needs to find redemption, or, being a sympathetic figure who's been led astray. Those are all versions we've seen in the past. This Iemon starts out and Oiwa's already left him because he murdered some dude over like a gambling like problem or something. And the way that Tomisaburō Wakayama plays him is like Iemon is just slightly drunk at minimum in every scene. And so there's this emphasis on Iemon being the worst. And Iemon has always been the worst, but like this is, I think, one of the worst Iemons, not in terms of quality of performance, but like morality. And I think that was certainly a contributor to like your problems watching the movie, is because like when you choose to emphasize how terrible he is, you got to watch him be terrible to a lot of people. But part and parcel with that, I think one of the things that came through really clear in this movie is the presumption and arrogance Iemon has, even when he's down on his luck, because he's a samurai. Like you talked about him going really over the top with beating up Kohei, and you're like, what the fuck, dude? And it's like, well, he's a samurai. He's allowed to do that.
He does say a line with Kohei that's like, even if it's only for a day, I'm still your master. Mm-hmm. And he also will call Naosuke a peasant because he's just a dude, whereas Iemon, yes, is like a higher class. Like he's called Lord Iemon or Lord Tamiya, or he was Lady Tamiya.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do make a good point there.
Yeah, like it's important to remember when you watch these movies that samurai isn't just a job. It's a class, and it's a class that's above almost everyone else in Japan. And so, the Ito family are not samurai, but they are rich. They're a merchant family. And so that's why, like, it's valuable to them to marry Iemon, even though he has nothing, because they'll get that class, marrying in. The other thing I thought was distinctive about this version, and it's not that it hasn't been in past versions, but it's like, with these adaptations, it's what flavors are we emphasizing, right? The other thing that I felt was really emphasized in this movie was the inherent misogyny of Edo period Japan.
Yeah.
Yotsuya Kaidan has always been a story about women who are done wrong by men, and then the men get their comeuppance. But in past versions of Yotsuya Kaidan, there will be good men somewhere in the story. And there just aren't in this version, really. Mm-hmm. Like, even Yomoshichi, Osode's fiance, who normally gets, like, a good guy role, kind of is shitty. Like, he shows up at the start of the movie, and he's, like, pissed off that Osode's working at this brothel, and the way he's going to spend time with her is he pays to spend time with her, and he's very possessive. Everyone kind of sucks, and everyone's really open about how much they're terrible and how much they hate women. Like that stuff that Sarah was talking about how unhappy Iemon is after Oiwa's given birth, right? And she's sickly and weak. Like he's having a conversation with some drinking buddies in like the next room over from Oiwa with no door even closed, where his drinking buddies are like, yeah, I bet you wish she died in childbirth. That would have like, really freed you up to go after a hot young woman. Like, everyone in this movie is super misogynistic, and it's not a glamorization of that. Like, it's very clearly meant to be a condemnation of this society and how misogynistic it is. But it can make it a tough watch if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, because this is, I talked about this as the first movie where I think it's been really clear about the brothel thing, right? And so like Osode, normally there's this kind of yin-yang thing with Osode and Oiwa where like Oiwa's married the samurai, and so she should have a better life, but she's like really unhappy and sickly. And then Osode is like the working girl and lower in class, but like seems to have her life a little bit more together. And like here, this movie starts with their dad selling Osode into sex work, right? So there's just like all throughout this movie much more of a sense of the way that the women are regarded by the men as like property and objects.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. And that's, I think, why I struggle with this movie, because of, yes, it's a condemnation of that society. Yes, Iemon has to be terrible because that's his role in the story. But is his comeuppance enough to make you feel better? Like, for lack of a better word, right? Like, does he get what's coming to him, or do they go far enough? And I think that there could have been ways, both through film and the story itself, that they could have made his death by Osode have a bit more of an emotional impact than what they do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think part of the problem is the thing we've already hinted at, which is that the ghost revenge part of this movie is the last half hour.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Like, I really like how the Oiwa haunting stuff is handled. I think they do some really cool stuff with Dutch angles, with like a giant version of her face chasing after him. I like that Kohei gets to get in on it too. I think it's done really well. It's not enough though. There's not enough of it. We get so focused on Naosuke's part of that second half, basically, that we don't get to really hold on to vengeful spirit.
Yeah, for a movie called Tale of Oiwa's Ghost, we don't get a lot of Oiwa or her ghost in this movie. I agree with you. The horror stuff that's here is really good, and I really like it, but there's not nearly enough of it. In particular, the murder of Ume's family feels really rushed. It's a cool scene, but it's like a minute and a half or something, or at least feels like it. Like, it's just really, really rushed through.
And I don't want it to just get lumped into another case of like, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? Because there are times where through this movie, these characters feel like they are puppets, just kind of being pushed around, forced to repeat this performance over and over. And it gets one note. Like, I feel like everyone here feels one note. No one really feels like there's an arc or a growth. It's just like, here's Oiwa, the downtrodden wife. Here's Ume, the sexy neighbor. Like, there's nothing else to it.
Ume in particular feels very underdeveloped. This is the least motivated her crush on Iemon has ever felt. Like, in past versions, it's something like he saves her from a bunch of bandits at a shrine, or performs some, kind of white knight behavior that gets her fluttering her heart. And here it's just like she drops her comb or something. Because
he bumps into her.
Yeah, he bumps into her. She drops her comb. He picks up her comb and gives it back to her, and she's immediately smitten. And I don't want to sound mean to Tomisaburō Wakayama, but of all the Iemons, he is perhaps the least believably one who you'd immediately love at first sight be smitten with, especially because he's made this decision to play a kind of overweight, undershaved, slightly drunk, sleazy Iemon, right?
Yeah, especially like, I get the class thing, but there's nothing about, you can smell him through the screen.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing about him that would make me go like, yeah, I want my daughter to marry this guy.
Whereas in past versions, even when Iemon has been particularly scummy, there's been versions where he's been played by like almost like matinee idol type actors. And so you could buy someone who doesn't realize he's a bad person kind of like falling for him. So, Ume feels very underdeveloped. I think performance-wise, Wakayama is good. He brings an interesting quality to Iemon where he's never happy long enough to be satisfied with anything.
Yeah.
Like, he'll get what he wants and be immediately complaining about it. I think the rest of the cast is also fine, but I agree with you that they don't get enough variety. Like, this version of Oiwa in particular really doesn't get a lot to do. The performers occasionally overact, but I don't think that's an acting failure. It feels like a consistent stylistic choice because everyone does it at some point in the movie. And there's certain lapses in people's behavior where they don't really feel motivated or realistic, and I get that puppet thing that you're describing. I think there are some cases where it's like, well, you have to keep in mind like the strict honor-bound Japanese society of this time kind of thing, like the way that Naosuke is immediately like, well, you caught me, time to, you can go ahead and murder me. Like, that kind of thing feels weird, but kind of has a place in the society. But I think this ties into why I don't think this movie's well written, which is I think it's very disjointed.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, lots of stuff happens and then we move on. There's no flow to the movie. The movie frequently has very good scenes, but then cuts between those scenes very abruptly and in a very disjointed manner, such that you don't feel a narrative flow. Like nothing is happening like dominoes. It's not like, oh, this happens, so then this happens. It's just this happens and then this happens, right? None of these characters feel psychologically believable, especially compared to like Kinishida's version from the 40s. And that version had the advantage of time to kind of flesh out everyone's motivations. But here, there's a lot of stuff that feels like this is here because it's in the play.
And I feel like we would have time to expand on Oiwa's ghost parts or add some depth to some characters if we didn't have whole 5-minute scenes of how bad Iemon is, where there's no cuts. It's like a single shot.
Mm-hmm. This is where I start to become very conflicted about this movie, because so far we've been complaining a lot, or at least like that's what it feels like. This movie is really well made in some regards. The movie's in black and white. It looks great.
Yeah, the restoration looks great. You can see the strands of Oiwa's hair. Like it looks good. Fantastic
lighting. Great use of light and shadow, like fantastic cinematography, really interesting shot composition throughout that uses like foreground elements to almost give you like a voyeuristic feel, like you're not supposed to be in these rooms seeing these things. Lots of like long takes interspersed with like very fast cutting. Like there'll be an action scene and the action scene will have a lot of fast actions quickly cut in close-ups to really like disorient you when the violence first happens. And then once the first sort of explosion of violence happens, the camera will like settle down and hide behind like a pot or something, as if you were a person in this room startled by the violence, and then just sit there on a static shot for like 5 minutes while the violence moves all around the set in front of you. And it's really cool, just great cinematography throughout. You have amazing camera movement. Sometimes it's very sweeping. Sometimes it's handheld.
Yeah, there's a moment in the final fight with the monks that the camera literally is like off hiding. And then as the fight moves, someone literally picks up the camera and rushes in.
Yeah.
Like it was a neat moment.
Yeah. So like, this is why I say it's well directed. Like it's a cool ass movie. But it sometimes feels like the movie is interested in being a cool movie more than it is interested in telling its story effectively. Like the hairbrushing scene really stuck out to me as being something that's like there out of obligation. It happens at the wrong point in the arc, as we already pointed out, but it's also like not really horrifying in the way that it was in like Nakagawa's version, where she's scraping the comb against, and you can hear it against like her tumorous face, and you can see the blood coming with it, and it's like really gross and horrific. And here it's just kind of here. It's here because it has to be. The horror is more like, oh wow, look how much hair she's taking off. But like that's all that's kind of here. And you know, there's stuff like the way that it's really weird that Iemon propositions Takuetsu to rape Oiwa when Oiwa's already been disfigured, when usually that's a thing where like Takuetsu goes to engage on this deal and then sees her become disfigured while he's there, whereas here he's there twice. He has to leave and come back. So it just feels like stuff kind of happens in the wrong order because they're like, oh yeah, there's this part that needs to happen. And so I totally agree with you with the feeling that sometimes these characters are just doing stuff because that's what they do in YOTSUYA KAIDAN.
Yeah. I agree with you about things feeling like they were shot very well. There's something else weird about this movie, and it's Naosuke.
Yeah.
So the actor, Jūshirō Konoe, in the credits, as in like the opening credits, it has a slide that's basically like an introducing Jūshirō Konoe as Naosuke, and then it hits who the director is, and it was like, that's weird. No one else really got something like that. And usually when you see something like that, it's like, oh, introducing Meryl Streep as Oiwa.
Sure.
You know, like in introducing someone's first
Introducing
role.
Audrey Hepburn as the mouse or whatever.
Yeah. It's like a new role, like their first time on screen, or it's like introducing a new character, or like it's a cameo, like it's a big get kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see what they do with that. And Naosuke's role just seemed oddly prominent.
This is the first version of Yotsuya Kaiden I can remember that has ever asked us to feel sorry for Naosuke, that has given him a death where he's like, I wish I hadn't been shitty, and like Osode kind of feels bad for him and stuff. In some versions we've seen before this, Naosuke is actually a worse guy than Iemon. He's like the guy who corrupts Iemon. He's the Iago, right? And here he's like gets a redemption arc.
Yeah. So it was weird. So I don't know if maybe part of like why some scenes are here or emphasized in different ways is to be like, look, it's the guy who's playing Naosuke. Like, I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, it is strange. I remember looking that actor up, and like he's most famous outside of this for like fighting Zatoichi like 5 or 6 years from now.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. I think what we definitely see here narratively is the pendulum swinging away from Nakagawa's simplification back to like the overcomplicated soap opera.
100%.
And I think one of the challenges of telling the story of Yotsuya Kaiden is that by the end of the story, all the characters have had a role to play, and you kind of understand like why you needed all of them. Now, some versions have gotten rid of characters entirely or merged them. Sometimes Kohei's here, sometimes he's not, because sometimes you can just replace him with Takuetsu and it's fine. Sometimes Omaki's important and sometimes she isn't. Like, characters get emphasized and de-emphasized, but generally speaking, by the end, it's like, oh yeah, we needed all those people. Especially once people start dying and it's like, oh, we had 30 characters because we still need like 4 or 5 by the end. But regardless, everyone has their role to play. But the challenge of adapting Yotsuya Kaiden, I think, is introducing all of them at the start without it feeling overwhelming and without this feeling of like, who's this guy and what's going on with these people? And oh my God, I have to keep all 30 of these people straight. Like, I think a really good adaptation of Yotsuya Kaiden finds ways to slowly introduce everyone in such a way that you can easily remember and keep track of them. This version feels a lot like a soap opera. It tries to do this thing at the start where it introduces everyone all at once. Like, there's a big crowd scene as everyone's moving around like a crowded street, and we just meet everyone. And I can understand the impulse for that. Like, oh, it's efficient. Like, we're going to meet everyone in one scene. But you're just like, okay, wait, who's important? There's so many people. And I feel like sometimes this movie doesn't know what to emphasize, or, you know, like I talked about the cool edit long take thing that this movie does, fast edits and then long takes. And it's cool, but sometimes it means that you're on like a far away long shot, long take in a moment where you'd want a close up, like Osode killing Iemon, you know, where it's like, for what this movie's trying to do cinematographically, it's like, oh, that makes sense because this is a specific stylistic thing the director's doing. But it doesn't really tell the story that well. And that comes back to what I was saying about, like, it feels like the director's trying to show off. It feels like the director's trying to be like, here, world, look at what I can do. And he's not fully thinking about how to best tell this story, perhaps because Yotsuya Kaiden is so commonly told that he felt like, oh, this is just like a template I can use to show off all these cool ideas I have, and it won't really matter because everybody knows this story anyway.
Yeah, I think that's likely how he approached it. I have just like a couple of last things I want to say. Mainly that, as I said, the Oiwa haunting, really do love it.
Yeah.
And I really do like the Kabuki dream sequence as a representation of the madness. Like, it was so out of left field that I was just like, oh, what we doing here, friends?
Yeah, it was super artsy. Like,
Yeah.
just, and again, maybe that comes back to my feeling that this is a director trying to show off a little. But yeah, there's just this artsy kabuki dance sequence in his mind.
And then it's like fully interrupted. And even like that moment when he's fighting Oiwa was neat. Like,
ending the movie on a big sword fight like this is Kill Bill Volume 1 was certainly a choice.
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah. So I have a question for you, Ben.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has enough horror to rank.
Ah, sure.
I do have a range if we do decide to rank, but my problem is that the elements that feel the most horrific with the spirits and the haunting, it's so little in the context of the rest of the movie. And I was also thinking about Jigoku, where we see people just being the absolute worst for the first hour, and then the last half hour is them in hell, where it worked for that balance. But in Kaidan Oiwa no Borei, I don't feel like we get enough of that comeuppance to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, because it doesn't stay focused on it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like you go back to Nakagawa's Tokaido Yotsuya Kaidan, and like I don't remember exactly where in the movie she dies and the haunting starts, but once the haunting starts, like it is relentless to the end of the movie, and it's really, really good. And I agree with you. I think the horror stuff here is really well done. It's just as well done as everything else in the movie in terms of at least like cinematically, but there really isn't enough of it. It really feels like it's kind of here because it's supposed to be. It's not so much an afterthought, but it does have. It's just rushed. I just wanted more of it. And again, like the movie, you called the movie Tale of Oiwa's Ghost. You know, and which made me think that it was going to really focus on the ghost more, and it doesn't. I also have a range. I wasn't thinking of disqualifying this, though. I feel like we have versions like the 1959 Kenji Misumi version, which is very like respectable. I think this has at least like more. When it does do the horror parts, they are graphic. Like this movie doesn't skimp on blood or making Oiwa really hideous. Like the Kenji Misumi version gave her like a skin rash almost. Whereas like this version, it's not as much of a horror version as the 56, which really laid on thick with the haunting. And it's certainly not as much as the Nakagawa, but I think it's enough to rank.
Okay.
I would consider ranking this.
All right. Yeah. I'll just point out like Jigoku was the previous year. We haven't really seen a lot of horror movies out of Japan. You know, thinking of the context of Japan's film industry at this moment, people would probably consider this horror because it had that similar balance. It came out in like July, so that's when their horror movies come out.
Yes, it's always during the summer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to ranking then.
Cool. Let's at least like look at our ranges here. And if we talk ourselves out of it, we talk of ourselves out of it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But I think if it's a horror movie, you know, it has failings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we talked about like where the other versions of Yotsuya Kaiden rank.
Yeah, so the 1949 version didn't rank at all. The 1956 version is ranked at number 194. The Misumi version from 1959 is ranked at number 128. And the Nakagawa version from 1959 is ranked at number 12.
Yeah, big jump there.
Yeah.
So I think in covering this version of Yotsuya Kaiden, one thing that I've learned is I think I have grown more affectionate for Yotsuya Kaiden whereas you have grown less affectionate over time. You're like tired of seeing it over and over again. And
it's like The Great Gatsby. I'm so fucking tired of watching adaptations of The fucking Great Gatsby. Like, I get it. Green light, capitalism, eyes from God. Like, I fucking get it.
Meanwhile, like, I watch this and I'm like, oh yeah, Naosuke, my old friend. like these characters slip on like a well made glove, you know, like
Iemon, old sport.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was thinking of ranking this, I was mostly thinking of where does it rank among the other Yotsuya Kaidans? And I wasn't super thinking of its failings as a horror story. I think because the horror stuff that is in here is really well done and I liked it. Even if I thought this version has structural writing problems. So I felt this was better than the 1959 Misumi version, which had the more matinee idol Iemon, who was depicted much more sympathetically, and it was a much more like respectable, kind of almost buttoned up version of the story. It was in color. It was trying to be like a prestige film. And I think if that ranks at 128, I think this is definitely better because this, I really liked the way that it like didn't shy away from the blood and it didn't shy away from like the seedy underbelly of this story, you know? So my floor is 127. It is at least better than the 59 Kenji Misumi version.
I have good news in that that's the same for me.
Okay. Looking up, I really struggled with where to place it against some of the other movies in this area because I ran into that like problem I sometimes have where I'm like, well, the filmmaking in this is really good and in a lot of cases better than stuff like The Manster or whatever. But the horror stuff is lacking. And even just as a retelling of Yotsuya Kaiden, it's kind of lacking in some areas. So I struggled a lot with kind of where to put it. So I ended up just looking for what's definitely better than this. And so I just looked up and up, struggling along the way until I landed at number 91, Curse of the Undead, which is the vampire western that like ends. Yeah, it ends with the like shootout in the town square and stuff. I think that's definitely better than this because that is a movie doing new things with old ingredients. And I don't think this movie is innovating enough to be better than that. So my range ended up being 92 to 127, which is a big range.
Well, I can help narrow that because when I was looking above 128, I looked at the next Japanese movie here, which is Onakyu Ketsuki, also from Nakagawa.
That's Lady Vampire, I think.
Yes, so that's ranked at number 121. Now, originally we had ranked this lower, but then we got an appeal in that talked about the way that it was challenging sexual norms of the time.
Yeah.
So that has like the cool vampire who listens to jazz.
And lives in a cave.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? That movie handles horror much better. Like it's from 1959, so it's like 2 years prior, but like it's like they know what they're doing. They're mixing shit up and like putting it into a bit of a Japanese context, putting it into a post-war Japanese context, and yeah, really having some fun. And between the two, I would much rather watch Lady Vampire.
Watching this version of Yotsuya Kaiden, I could certainly see how Tai Kato went on to become famous for like yakuza movies.
100%.
Especially if they were period yakuza movies as well, but like even modern, like he's really good at like, as I said, like the seedy underbelly stuff. I really wish we could have seen him go more all out on the horror in this. I wish structurally it had been a bit more sound. I feel slightly bad for him just having to follow up the Nakagawa version, frankly, because, man, I don't think we're going to get a higher ranking Yotsuya Kaiden than that. I'm going to be super surprised if we like stumble over one in the years to come and we're like, yeah, this is the best version. Like, I doubt it. So I feel a little bad for him. And I enjoyed this enough that now I kind of want to go find some other Tai Kato films. Like, I wouldn't
I'd be
mind.
into that.
Yeah, like he seems like a cool director. But I'm inclined to agree with you. I remember wondering if this was better or worse than Bad Seed and Village of the Damned, which are at 119 and 120, and are both really well-regarded movies that we did not like as much as most people. And I was like, okay, so maybe those should be a ceiling, right? So I'm happy with this. I think it's definitely better than Wasp Woman. So I'm happy with putting this at the new 122.
Yeah, I think Wasp Woman, we talked about the treatment of women and their place in this society in Kaidan Oiwa no Borei, and the Wasp Woman kind of engages with that, with the idea of like this female CEO of a beauty company going to extreme lengths to be Buzz. No, she's a wasp. To kind of like stay at the top of that industry. I think the fact that I completely agree with you that Kaidan Oiwa no Borei is like doing a condemnation of this time period more than just these characters, I think on that level puts it above Wasp Woman as well. Like, yes, the horror stuff, but like just taking the two of them as movies and what they are accomplishing.
I also just think, like, no shade to Roger Corman, but I think this is a better directed movie. Like, this movie looks so cool in a lot of it. Like, I don't know, like the filmmaking in this really helped it punch above its weight class in a lot of cases for me.
Yeah, I don't think Corman would be upset with that at all.
All right, so entering the list at the new number 122, it's Kaidan Oiwa no Borei from 1961, directed by Tai Kato.
If you would like to see this list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com. There you can find links to the other Yotsuya Kaidan episodes that we've mentioned, as well as links to any of the other episodes that we might have spoken about on our list. If you would like to contest this or any other ranking, you can drop us a line through our Ask Box on Tumblr, or you can reach out over email at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com or over Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and a whole host of other podcasting apps. If you want to make sure that you never miss an episode, you can subscribe using our RSS feed. If you really like the show, you could leave us a rating or a review. Those are very helpful for helping spread the word about the show. Or you can do that sort of manually by just telling folks about the show, whether in person or on social media. We really appreciate word of mouth to help grow the show's audience. And if you like what you're hearing and want to support us financially, you can head on over to patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast, where you can become a patron of the night for as little as $1 a month. Patrons get thanked on the show, and at higher levels get access to cool bonus content. So that's at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
So Ben, what are we watching next week?
Next week, Sarah, we are heading to Italy for a film whose Italian title is Lycanthropus.
Ooh.
But whose American release title was Werewolf in a Girl's Dormitory.
One feels very like, maybe because it feels a little bit like you got a little bit of that Latin feeling, so very like, oh, lycanthropus. And then the other one feels very lowbrow. Wow.
So we'll find out which it is next week, Creatures of the Night.
Bye.
Bye.